I always believed that my family was unbreakable. We lived in a sprawling estate in the hills, a place where the grass was always green and the cars in the driveway were always polished. My father, Arthur, was a self-made man. He had built a construction empire from the ground up, working 18-hour days to ensure we never wanted for anything. He was a man of few words, but his actions screamed love. He looked at my mother, Veronica, as if she were the only woman in the world. To him, she was a queen. To the outside world, she was the perfect wife, charitable, beautiful, and poised. But I saw things others didn't. I was 22, home from college for the summer, and I had a habit of being invisible in my own house. I noticed the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes when my father hugged her. I noticed the way she guarded her phone like it was a nuclear launch code. The house was filled with expensive furniture and art, but lately, it felt empty. The warmth had been sucked out, replaced by a tension that only I seemed to feel. I didn't know it then, but our perfect life was a house of cards, and my mother was holding a mash. My father was tired. I could see it in the way his shoulders slumped when he walked through the front door at 8 p.m. He was 55, and the stress of running a massive company was taking its toll. Yet, the first thing he always did was ask for Veronica. "Where is your mother?" he would ask, loosening his tie. "She's at the gym," or "she's at a charity gala," I would reply. She was rarely home for dinner anymore. Arthur never complained. He trusted her implicitly. He would eat his dinner alone at the long mahogany table, scrolling through emails, believing that his wife was out doing good work for the community. He was generous to a fault. He had given her a limitless credit card, a new luxury SUV, and full control over the household staff. He wanted to make her happy because he felt guilty for working so much. He didn't realize that his hard work was funding the very lifestyle that allowed her to betray him. He was building a kingdom for a queen who was already planning her abdication. It was painful to watch, like seeing a man walk blindly toward a cliff edge. The cracks began to show in June. My mother had hired a new interior designer to renovate the guest wing. His name was Julian. He was young, perhaps only a few years older than me, with slick hair and a smile that felt practiced. He drove a sports car that I knew a designer's salary couldn't easily afford. At first, he was just a contractor. He would come over with fabric swatches and paint samples. But soon, the meetings became frequent. They happened when my father was at the office. I would be in the library studying, and I would hear them laughing in the living room. It wasn't the polite laughter of a client and a professional. It was hushed, intimate giggling. I tried to dismiss it. My mother was a social butterfly, maybe she was just being friendly. But the renovations were taking a long time. Walls were being painted and repainted. Furniture was ordered and returned. It became clear that the project was just an excuse for Julian to be in the house. I started to feel a knot of dread in my stomach every time I saw his car in the driveway. One Tuesday afternoon, I came home early from a meeting with my academic advisor. The house was quiet. The maids were off that day. I walked into the kitchen to get a glass of water and saw my mother's phone sitting on the marble island. It buzzed. I shouldn't have looked. I knew it was an invasion of privacy. But the suspicion had been eating at me for weeks. The screen lit up with a message from Design Project. The text read, "He's leaving for Tokyo on Thursday. We have the whole weekend. Can't wait to be in your arms." My blood ran cold. My father was indeed scheduled for a business trip to Japan on Thursday. I stared at the phone, my hand shaking. This wasn't just flirting. This was a plan. This was a betrayal. I heard footsteps approaching from the hallway. I quickly put the phone down and turned to the fridge, my heart hammering against my ribs. My mother walked in, looking radiant in a tennis outfit. "Oh, you're home early," she said breezily. She grabbed her phone and slid it into her pocket without missing a beat. I didn't sleep that night. I wrestled with the burden of the truth. If I told my father, it would destroy him. He worshipped her. If I was wrong or if I couldn't prove it, he might hate me for suggesting it. But if I stayed silent, I was an accomplice. I decided I needed to be sure. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I couldn't destroy our family on the basis of a single text message that could be explained away as a joke or a misunderstanding. Thursday arrived. My father said his goodbyes. He kissed my mother deeply. "I'll miss you, Ronnie," he said. "Call me when you land," she replied, smiling that fake smile. As soon as his car left for the airport, the atmosphere in the house changed. She went upstairs and packed a small bag. "I'm going to the spa in Napa for the weekend," she told me. "Don't wait up." I nodded, pretending to believe her. But as soon as she drove off in her white convertible, I ran to my car. I wasn't going to let her disappear. I was going to follow her. I kept a safe distance. My hands were sweating on the steering wheel. I felt like a criminal stalking my own mother. She didn't drive toward Napa. She drove toward the coast, to a high-end boutique hotel that was known for its privacy. I watched from the parking lot as she pulled up to the valet. A minute later, Julian's sports car pulled up behind her. They didn't hide it here. They greeted each other with a kiss that made me look away in disgust. He grabbed her bag, and they walked into the lobby arm in arm, laughing. They looked like a couple on a honeymoon. I felt a mix of rage and sorrow. My father was currently sitting on a plane, flying across the ocean to secure our future, while his wife was checking into a hotel with a man young enough to be her son. I took out my phone and snapped a few photos from my car. The grain was high, but the faces were clear. I had the proof. Now, I had the impossible choice of what to do with it. I drove home in a daze. The house felt like a mausoleum. I spent the weekend pacing the floors. When my mother returned on Sunday evening, she looked refreshed and happy. "The spa was divine," she lied, pouring herself a glass of wine. "How was your weekend, Daniel?" I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the selfishness behind the beauty. "Did you enjoy the ocean view?" I asked quietly. She froze. The glass stopped halfway to her lips. "I was in Napa, Daniel. There is no ocean." "I saw you, Mom," I said, my voice trembling. "I saw you with Julian at the Coastal Grand." The color drained from her face, but only for a second. Then, her expression hardened. She set the glass down. "You were spying on me?" she hissed. She wasn't sorry. She was angry that she had been caught. "How dare you follow me? After everything I do for you?" She went on the offensive immediately, trying to make me the villain for discovering her sin. "I'm going to tell Dad," I said. It was the only card I had. She laughed. It was a cold, harsh sound. "Go ahead," she challenged. "Tell him. Who do you think he will believe? His loyal wife of 25 years, or his son who has been acting paranoid and jealous lately?" She stepped closer to me. "I'll tell him you're on drugs. I'll tell him you're having a breakdown. I'll have you cut off from your trust fund before you can blink." I stared at her in shock. This wasn't just an affair, this was malice. She was willing to destroy my reputation to protect her secret. "You wouldn't," I whispered. "Try me," she said. "Julian makes me happy. Your father is a bore. He works all the time. I deserve this." She picked up her wine again. "Now, go to your room and forget you saw anything. If you breathe a word, I will make your life a living hell." I went to my room, defeated. I realized then that my mother wasn't just making a mistake. She was dangerous. The weeks that followed were a nightmare. My father returned from Japan, exhausted but bearing gifts. He gave her a diamond necklace. She put it on and kissed him, while looking over his shoulder at me with a smirk. It was a power play. She was showing me that she was untouchable. Julian continued to come over for the renovations. Now they were even bolder. They would touch hands when passing the salt at lunch if my father wasn't looking. I felt like I was living in a pressure cooker. My grades started to slip. I couldn't focus. My mother made good on her threat to undermine me. She started planting seeds of doubt in Arthur's mind. "Daniel is acting so strange lately," she would say at dinner. "I think he's hanging out with the wrong crowd." My father looked at me with concern. "Is everything okay, son?" he asked. "I'm fine, Dad," I said, gritting my teeth. I couldn't tell him. Not yet. She had checkmated me. I needed something undeniable. Something she couldn't spin. Then things got worse. My father had a mild heart attack in July. It was a terrifying wake-up call. We rushed him to the hospital. He survived, but the doctors told him he needed to reduce his stress immediately. He lay in the hospital bed, looking pale and fragile. "I need to slow down," he whispered to us. "I want to spend more time with my family." Veronica held his hand and wept fake tears. "Oh, Arthur, we love you so much. Just rest." But as soon as we left the room, her demeanor changed. She pulled out her phone. "This complicates things," I heard her whisper to Julian in the hallway. "If he retires, he'll be home all the time." She wasn't worried about his health. She was worried about her freedom to cheat. That moment broke something inside me. I stopped being her son and started being her enemy. I realized she didn't love my father at all. She was waiting for him to die so she could inherit the empire and share it with Julian. I decided to stop fighting her openly. I went underground. I apologized to her. "Mom, I'm sorry, I lied one morning. I was just jealous. I won't say anything. I just want us to be a family." She eyed me suspiciously, then smiled. "Good boy," she said, patting my cheek. "I knew you'd come to your senses." She let her guard down. She thought she had won. But I began recording everything. I bought voice-activated recorders and hid them in the living room and her car. I started tracking the family finances. I noticed large withdrawals of cash. She was funneling money to Julian. He was billing us for materials that never arrived. Marble from Italy, silk from France, thousands of dollars vanishing into his pocket. I built a dossier. It wasn't just adultery anymore. It was embezzlement. It was theft from the man who was lying in a hospital bed paying for her lifestyle. By August, my father was home and recovering. He announced that he wanted to throw a massive party for their 25th wedding anniversary in September. "A silver jubilee," he said, his eyes shining. "I want to renew our vows." It made me sick to my stomach, but Veronica played the part of the blushing bride perfectly. "Oh, Arthur, how romantic," she cooed. The planning began. It was going to be the social event of the year. Hundreds of guests, business partners, and press. Veronica was in her element. She bought a dress that cost more than my college tuition. Julian, of course, was helping with the event design. I sat in my room, listening to the recordings I had captured. I heard them mocking my father. "The old fool actually thinks I love him," Veronica's voice said on the tape. "Just a few more years, babe," Julian replied. "Once the trust transfers, we can dump him in a nursing home." That recording was the nail in the coffin. I had enough evidence to put her in jail, or at least leave her penniless. But simply showing my father at the breakfast table didn't feel like enough. She had threatened to destroy me. She had mocked his love. She was planning to humiliate him by renewing vows she had already broken. I decided that the truth needed to come out in a way that she couldn't gaslight her way out of. I contacted my father's lawyer, Mr. Henderson. He was an old family friend, loyal to Arthur above all else. I met him in a diner across town. I showed him the photos. I played the tapes. Mr. Henderson's face turned gray. "My God," he whispered. "Arthur will be devastated." "He will be," I said. "But he needs to know before he signs the vow renewal papers. There are legal implications." Henderson nodded. "Leave it to me, Daniel. We need to protect the assets. But we have to handle the reveal carefully." The week of the party arrived. The estate was transformed into a wonderland of white roses and silver ribbons. Tents were erected on the lawn. My father seemed stronger, fueled by the excitement. He kept talking about how lucky he was. Every time he spoke, I felt a sharp pain in my chest. I felt guilty for what was about to happen, but I knew it was necessary surgery to remove a tumor. Veronica was manic. She was barking orders at the staff, yelling at the caterers, and sneaking off with Julian every chance she got. She was drunk on power. She thought she had pulled off the perfect crime. She had the money, the boyfriend, and the devoted husband. She didn't notice that Mr. Henderson had been visiting the house every evening to sign business papers, with my father in the study. She didn't notice that my father's eyes had lost a bit of their warmth when he looked at her. The night of the anniversary came. The driveway was filled with limousines. Champagne flowed like water. A live orchestra played under the stars. Veronica looked stunning in a silver gown, holding court with the city's elite. Julian was there, wearing a tuxedo, blending in as a friend of the family. I stood by the bar watching. My palms were sweating. I caught my father's eye across the room. He gave me a small, sad nod. My heart stopped. He knew. Mr. Henderson must have told him. I hadn't realized they had already spoken. The realization hit me like a truck. My father wasn't the naive victim I thought he was. He was a businessman who had survived sharks for 30 years. He had processed the information, and now he was executing a plan. At 9 p.m., the music stopped. My father took the stage. The spotlight hit him. He looked distinguished, powerful. Veronica glided up to stand beside him, beaming, linking her arm through his. The crowd applauded. "Thank you all for coming," Arthur said, his voice amplified across the lawn. 25 years is a long time. It's a lifetime. He looked at Veronica. "My wife has been many things to me. A partner, a mother, a muse." Veronica smiled, tilting her head. "But," Arthur continued, his tone shifting slightly, "honesty is the foundation of any marriage. And tonight, I want to be completely honest with all of you." The crowd went silent. There was a tension in the air, a vibration that something wasn't right. Veronica's smile faltered slightly. She sensed the shift. She squeezed his arm, perhaps trying to signal him to stop. He pulled his arm away gently. "I have a special presentation," Arthur said. He gestured to the large screen behind them, which was meant to show a montage of their life together. The screen flickered to life. It started with wedding photos. The crowd, Ed. Then the music cut out. The image changed. It wasn't a wedding photo. It was a photo of Veronica and Julian at the Coastal Grand Hotel. Then another. Julian kissing her neck. Then a video clip, silent but undeniable, of them arguing about money in our kitchen. Then a screenshot of the bank transfers showing the embezzlement. A gasp rippled through the crowd. It started as a murmur and grew into a roar of shock. Veronica stood frozen, her mouth open. She looked at the screen, then at Arthur. "Arthur, what is this?" "It's a fake. It's AI." She screamed, her voice shrill without the microphone. "It is not fake," Arthur said calmly into the mic, "and neither are the audio recordings." He pressed a button on the podium. Veronica's voice boomed over the speakers, clear as day. "Once the trust transfers, we can dump him in a nursing home." The silence that followed was heavier than anything I had ever felt. It was the silence of a life ending. The guests backed away from the stage as if Veronica were contagious. Julian, who had been standing near the buffet, tried to slip away into the shadows. 2 large security guards stepped into his path. He was trapped. Veronica looked around, her eyes wild. She looked at her friends, who were turning their backs. She looked at me. I just stared at her, unmoving. She had brought this on herself. "Why?" Veronica whispered, tears streaming down her face. Tears of humiliation, not remorse. "How could you do this to me publicly?" Arthur looked at her with eyes that were no longer in love, but completely cold. "Because you invited the world to celebrate a lie," he said. "So I invited them to witness the truth." Then came the final blow. Arthur looked at Julian. "And Mr. Julian," Arthur said, "thank you for your cooperation." Veronica whipped her head around to look at her lover. "What?" she gasped. Arthur nodded. "When Mr. Henderson approached Julian yesterday with the evidence of embezzlement, a crime that carries a prison sentence, Julian was very eager to cut a deal. He provided the rest of the text messages in exchange for us not pressing criminal charges." Veronica stared at Julian. The young man she had risked everything for couldn't even look her in the eye. He had sold her out to save his own skin. "The party is over," Arthur announced. "Veronica, you will leave. Now." "This is my house," she shrieked, losing all composure. "I built this life. You can't throw me out." Mr. Henderson stepped forward onto the stage, holding a document. "Actually," Henderson said, projecting his voice, "the prenuptial agreement you signed 25 years ago and the postnuptial update you signed 10 years ago in exchange for the vacation home has a very strict infidelity clause. In the event of proven adultery, you forfeit all claims to the marital assets, the estate, and spousal support." He adjusted his glasses. You leave with what you brought into the marriage. Which, if I recall, was a suitcase of clothes and a used Honda. The humiliation was absolute. Security guards escorted Veronica to the front gate. She wasn't allowed to go upstairs to pack. We will ship your personal effects, Arthur said. But the jewelry stays. The car stays. Those were gifts to my wife. You are not her anymore. She stood at the bottom of the driveway, looking up at the mansion that was glowing with lights. She looked like a ghost. She screamed my name. Daniel, help me. He's crazy. I walked to the edge of the terrace and looked down at her. Goodbye, Mom, I said softly. I turned my back. A taxi arrived a few minutes later, not a limo, just a yellow cab. She got in, sobbing, and disappeared into the night. The guests left quietly. The music never started again. The divorce was swift. She tried to fight it, of course. She hired a lawyer who promised her he could overturn the prenup. But the evidence was overwhelming. The video of the nursing home comment turned every judge against her. It proved malice. She wasn't just a cheating wife, she was a predator. She lost everything. The social circle she had cultivated for decades evaporated. The friends she lunched with didn't want to be associated with a woman who embezzled from a dying husband. She was radioactive. Julian moved to another state the next day, terrified of Arthur's reach. Veronica was left alone in a small apartment across town, living off a meager savings account that was draining fast. My father and I stayed in the big house. It was quiet, but it was a peaceful quiet. The tension was gone. Arthur took time off work. We traveled. We fished. We actually talked. He told me he was proud of me for trying to protect him. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner, he said one evening by the fire. Love makes you blind, Daniel. Never forget that. We renovated the house again. We got rid of everything Julian had touched. We painted over the gray walls with warm colors. It felt like a home again. My father eventually started dating a kind woman named Margaret, a librarian who didn't care about his money. They played chess and drank tea. It was boring and it was perfect. 3 years later, I ran into my mother. I was downtown for a job interview. I walked into a diner to get a coffee. She was there, wearing a waitress uniform. She looked 10 years older. Her hair was dull, her hands were rough. She was wiping down a table. She saw me. She froze. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the old Veronica, the pride, the arrogance. She straightened up and patted her hair. Daniel, she said. You look well. Hello, Mother, I said. You're working here? She looked away, shame flushing her cheeks. It's a job, she muttered. The legal fees took the rest of the money. She looked at my suit, my watch. Is your father happy? She asked, her voice cracking. Yes, I said. He is. He's very happy. She nodded slowly. And you? I'm good, I said. I'm free. I put a $20 bill on the counter for a $3 coffee. Keep the change, I said. I walked out. I didn't look back. I didn't feel hate anymore. I just felt pity. She had everything. A loving husband, a devoted son, a life of luxury, and she traded it all for a few months of excitement with a man who sold her out for a severance package. She had gambled her kingdom and lost. Now, she was just another customer in a diner, waiting for a tip, while the world she used to rule spun on without her. The silence in her life was deafening now, but this time, she had no one to blame but herself. I drove home from that diner with a heavy heart. You would think seeing the villain of your life reduced to waiting tables would feel like a victory lap. It didn't. It just felt tragic. I didn't tell my father about seeing her. Arthur was in a good place. He and Margaret were planning a cruise to Alaska. His health was stable, his laughter was genuine, and the shadow of Veronica had finally lifted from the estate. I wasn't going to be the one to bring the clouds back. But Veronica wasn't done. A week later, I received a call at my office. It was from a blocked number. I answered, expecting a telemarketer. Daniel? The voice was raspy, desperate. It was her. How did you get this number? I asked, my grip tightening on the phone. I'm your mother, I know things, she said, though the arrogance was thin. I need help, Daniel. Real help. 3 months. Behind on rent. They're going to evict me. I'm sleeping on a mattress on the floor. I closed my eyes. That's not my problem, I said. You signed the papers. You took the settlement. The settlement was nothing, she cried. The lawyers took it all. Daniel, please. Just $5,000. That's all I need to get back on my feet. I'll pay you back. The lie was so reflexive for her. We both knew she would never pay me back. I looked at the photo of my father on my desk. I can't do that, I said firmly. If I give you money, I'm betraying Dad. You made your choice. He doesn't have to know, she pleaded. It can be our secret, just like the old days. That phrase, just like the old days, sent a shiver down my spine. It reminded me of the secrets she kept with Julian. The secrets that destroyed our family. We don't have secrets anymore, I said, cold as ice. Do not call me again. I hung up and blocked the number. I thought that was the end of it. I was naive. Desperation turns people into something else entirely. It turns them into survivors who will bite the hand that refuses to feed them. 3 days later, I came home to find a police cruiser in my driveway. Panic seized me. I thought something had happened to my father. I ran inside. Arthur was sitting in the living room, looking pale but physically unharmed. Margaret was holding his hand. The police officer stood by the fireplace. What happened? I asked, breathless. We had an intruder, the officer said. Someone tried to bypass the rear security gate using an old passcode. My father looked up at me, his eyes filled with a deep, weary sorrow. It was her, Daniel, he whispered. It was Veronica. She hadn't come to hurt us, she had come to steal. She knew where the wall safe was in the master bedroom. She thought she could sneak in, grab some cash or jewelry, and slip out. But she forgot that after the divorce, I had upgraded the entire security system. The cameras caught her instantly. Where is she? I asked the officer. We have her in custody downtown, he replied. Mr. Sterling, we need to know if you want to press charges. It's breaking and entering, attempted burglary, and violation of a restraining order. The room went silent. Pressing charges meant sending my mother to prison. It meant a public trial. It meant dragging our name through the mud again. Arthur sighed, a sound that seemed to come from his soul. She was looking for the sapphire ring, he said softly. The one I gave her when you were born. I didn't give it to her in the divorce because it was a family heirloom. He looked at me. What do we do, son? He was deferring to me. He was too tired to fight her anymore. I looked at the officer. Press charges, I said. If we let her go, she'll come back. She needs to know the door is closed forever. The process was grim. I had to go to the station to give a statement. I saw her in the holding cell. She didn't look like the woman in the diner anymore. She looked wild, angry. When she saw me, she didn't beg. She spat at the glass. You ungrateful brat, she screamed. I gave you life. You owe me. I turned to the detective. She has a gambling problem, I said, remembering the financial records from years ago. And she owes money to bad people. That's why she broke in. She's not just broke, she's in debt. The detective nodded. That explains the text messages on her phone. Someone named Vinny is threatening to break her legs. It was a tragic confirmation. Her affair with Julian had led her to a lifestyle she couldn't sustain, and in her fall, she had grabbed onto vices that pulled her down faster. We didn't have to go to trial. Her lawyer advised her to plead guilty to a lesser charge of trespassing and attempted theft to avoid a lengthy sentence. She was sentenced to 2 years in a minimum security facility, plus mandatory counseling. It was a light sentence, but for a woman who once hosted galas for the governor, it was a death sentence for her pride. The day she was sentenced, Arthur and I went fishing. We took the boat out to the middle of the lake. We didn't talk about her. We talked about the stock market, about the weather, about the future. It was a silent agreement to let the waters wash away the stain she had left on our lives. But as I cast my line, I wondered if she was thinking of us. I wondered if in her cell she finally understood the cost of betrayal. Or if she was just plotting her next move. Life moved on. The 2 years while she was incarcerated were the most peaceful of my life. I met a woman named Claire. She was an architect, smart and kind. She didn't care about my family fortune. She loved me for my dry sense of humor and my loyalty. I told her everything about my mother on our third date. I didn't want any secrets. Claire listened, horrified and fascinated. It sounds like she has a narcissistic personality disorder, Claire said. She can't love people, she only uses them. It was a diagnosis that made sense. It helped me stop blaming myself. I used to wonder if I hadn't been a good enough son. Now I knew that I was just a prop in her play, and when I went off script, she tried to write me out. I proposed to Claire a year later. My father was the best man. He was happier than I had ever seen him. Then, the letter arrived. It was from the prison. Veronica was being released on parole for good behavior. She had served 18 months. The letter was a standard notification for victims, letting us know she would be out in the community. I hid the letter from my father. He was 70 now, and his heart wasn't as strong as it used to be. I didn't want him looking over his shoulder. I hired a private investigator to keep tabs on her. I wanted to know where she was, not to help her, but to ensure she stayed away. The PI reported that she had moved into a halfway house on the edge of the city. She was working in a laundry facility. It was hard, hot work. She looks tired, the PI told me over the phone. She doesn't talk to anyone. She just works and goes home. It seemed she had finally been broken. One rainy afternoon, I was leaving my office building when a woman stepped out from behind a pillar. I flinched, my body going into fight or flight mode. It was Veronica. But she was unrecognizable. Her hair was completely gray, cut short. She wore cheap clothes that didn't fit. She looked frail. "I'm not here to ask for money," she said quickly, raising her hands. Her voice was thin. "I know the restraining order is still in effect. I wanted to see you." I stood there, rain dripping off my umbrella. "You shouldn't be here," I said. "If I call the police, you go back to jail." "I know," she said. "I just heard you're getting married. I saw the announcement in the paper." She looked at my hand, at the ring on my finger. "She looks like a nice girl." "She is," I said defensively. "She's loyal. She doesn't lie." Veronica flinched as if I had slapped her. She looked down at her worn shoes. "I had a lot of time to think in that cell, Daniel. I replayed that night at the party 1,000 times. I replayed the affair." She looked up, and for the first time in my life, I saw actual tears in her eyes. Not the fake ones she used to manipulate my father. Real, painful tears. "I ruined it," she whispered. "I had the perfect life, and I threw it away because I was bored. Because I was vain. I thought I was the center of the universe." She wiped her face. "I just wanted you to know that I know that now. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I wanted my son to know that I'm sorry." I stood there. Part of me wanted to hug her. She was my mother, after all. But the other part of me remembered the nursing home comment. I remembered the theft. I remembered the years of gaslighting. "I appreciate the apology," I said, my voice steady. "But an apology doesn't fix the vase once it's shattered. You can glue it back together, but it still can't hold water." She nodded slowly. "I understand." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, crumpled envelope. "I don't have any money, but I found this. It was in my storage unit. It's the only thing I have left from before." She handed it to me. It was a photo of me and her when I was 5 years old, building a sandcastle. "Goodbye, Daniel," she said. She turned and walked away into the rain. I didn't stop her. I opened the envelope in my car. Behind the photo was a note written on the back. "My greatest regret is that I won't know the man you become." I sat there for a long time. It was a moment of closure I hadn't expected. She wasn't a monster anymore. She was just a pathetic, lonely woman living with the consequences of her own ego. I went home and showed the photo to Claire. She held my hand. "Do you want to invite her?" she asked softly. "To the wedding?" I shook my head immediately. "No. That part of my life is over. She's a cautionary tale, not a guest." It was a hard decision, but it was the right one. Inviting her back in would be inviting the chaos. I had to protect my future, even if it meant hardening my heart to my past. The wedding was beautiful. My father gave a toast that made everyone cry. He spoke about resilience and the importance of choosing the right partner. He looked at Margaret with so much love it made my chest ache. He had found his second chance. I looked around the room filled with friends and family who actually cared about us. There were no social climbers, no fake smiles. It was genuine. I realized that by cutting Veronica out, we hadn't just removed a negative, we had created space for positives to grow. If she had stayed, this joy would have been suffocated by her cynicism. 2 years later, my father passed away in his sleep. It was peaceful. His heart just stopped. I was devastated, but I wasn't angry. He had lived a full, redemptive life in his final years. The funeral was massive. Hundreds of people came, not because he was rich, but because he was good. I stood by the graveside, accepting condolences. Then I saw her. Veronica was standing at the very back of the cemetery, under a tree. She was dressed in black. She didn't come closer. She just watched. She didn't try to make a scene. She didn't try to talk to me. She simply witnessed the burial of the man she had destroyed and then lost. When the ceremony was over, she vanished before I could even acknowledge her. A week after the funeral, I received a call from a hospital. "Mr. Sterling? We have a Veronica Sterling here. She listed you as her emergency contact." I sighed. "Is she okay?" "She's in critical condition," the doctor said. "Pneumonia. Her immune system is very weak." I drove to the hospital. I couldn't leave her to die alone. It wasn't about love, it was about basic humanity. I walked into the ward. It was a charity ward, crowded and noisy. She was in a bed in the corner, hooked up to a ventilator. She looked skeletal. The doctor told me she had been living in a shelter for the homeless after losing her job at the laundry. She had been sleeping on the streets in the winter. I sat by her bed. She opened her eyes. They were cloudy. She recognized me. She tried to smile, but it was just a twitch of her lips. I took her hand. It was cold and rough. "Hi, Mom," I said softly. She squeezed my fingers weakly. She couldn't speak because of the tube. I sat there for hours. I told her about Dad's funeral. I told her he wasn't in pain. I told her about my wife. I didn't tell her I loved her, because I couldn't lie. But I told her, "I forgive you." I felt her hand relax. A tear rolled down her cheek into the pillow. I think that was what she was waiting for. She needed permission to let go. She died that night. There was no fanfare. No breaking news. The woman who once made headlines for her galas passed away as a Jane Doe in a county hospital. I paid for her cremation. I didn't bury her next to my father, that would have been an insult to him. I scattered her ashes in the ocean, near the Coastal Grand Hotel, the place where her affair had been exposed. It seemed fitting. That was where she had chosen her path. That was where she had decided that her family wasn't enough. I let the wind carry her away. As the gray dust settled into the dark water, I felt the final weight lift off my shoulders. The story was over. Going through her meager belongings at the shelter was a sobering experience. She had almost nothing. A few changes of clothes, a Bible, and a small notebook. I opened the notebook. It was a diary she had kept since prison. I read through the entries. They were filled with regret. I saw a woman today with her son. One entry read, "She was yelling at him. I wanted to shake her. I wanted to tell her that one day he will grow up and leave her if she doesn't cherish him. I wish I could tell Daniel I love him. But my love is poison to him now. The best way to love him is to stay away." I closed the book. It confirmed what I had suspected. She had changed, but it was too late. The tragedy of her life wasn't that she was evil, it was that she realized the value of what she had only after she had burned it to ash. It was a lesson I vowed to never forget. I took the diary home and put it in a box in the attic. I didn't want it on my bookshelf. I wanted it put away, a closed chapter. I went downstairs to find Claire holding our newborn son. "He's hungry," she said, smiling. I took my son in my arms. He looked at me with wide, trusting eyes. "I've got you," I whispered to him. I will never let you down. I looked at Claire. We need to set up a trust for him, I said. But not just money. I want to write him letters. Advice. Things I learned. Claire nodded. That's a beautiful idea. I started writing that night. The first letter wasn't about business or money. It was about integrity. I wrote about how trust is like a sheet of paper. Once you crumple it, it can never be perfectly smooth again. I wrote about my father, the builder who built a life of honesty. And I wrote about my mother, the queen who lost her crown because she wanted more than she deserved. Years turned into decades. The company grew. I became the CEO my father always wanted me to be. I ran the business with transparency. We treated our employees like family. We never cut corners. Every time I had a difficult ethical choice, I asked myself, what would Veronica do? And then I did the exact opposite. One day, an old man came to see me at the office. He looked familiar. It took me a moment to place him. It was Julian, the interior designer. He was balding now, dressed in a cheap suit. He looked nervous. Daniel, he said. I heard about your mother passing a few years back. Get out, I said calmly. I didn't even stand up. I just wanted to say. He stammered. I wanted to apologize. I was young. She manipulated me too. I looked at him with pity. She didn't force you to take the money, Julian. You made your choices. And from the look of you, they didn't pay off. I'm looking for work, he admitted. No one in this town will hire me. The reputation stuck. Consequences, they have a long shelf life. Get out of my office. He left. I didn't feel anger. I just felt validation. The universe had balanced the scales. Everyone had ended up exactly where their character led them. I am an old man now. My son runs the company. He is a good man, better than I ever was. I spend my days in the garden, much like my father did. I think about the arc of my family's history often. It's strange how a single illicit affair didn't just break a marriage, it reshaped 3 generations. It broke my mother, it liberated my father, and it forged me. It taught me that everything we have, the cars, the houses, the status, is rented. The only thing we truly own is our name and how we treat people. Sometimes, young people ask me for the secret to success. They expect stock tips or real estate advice. I tell them the story of the Silver Jubilee. I tell them about the woman who stood on a stage in a diamond necklace and lost it all in 10 seconds because she thought she was smarter than the truth. I tell them, you can cheat the bank, you can cheat your boss, you can even cheat your spouse for a while. But you can never cheat the consequences. They always find you. They might come as a lawsuit, or a bankruptcy, or a lonely death in a charity ward. But they always come. So, build your house on rock, not sand. Love the people who love you. And if you ever feel the temptation to trade your integrity for a moment of thrill, remember Veronica. Remember the silence of the empty mansion as the taxi drove her away. Remember that the fall doesn't kill you. It's the landing in a life you never expected that breaks you. I survived the crash. I built a new plane. And I flew higher than she ever dreamed. That is my revenge. That is my peace.